Hello, friends. Welcome back to a special post-Game 1 NBA Finals edition of No Cap Room. My name is Jake Fischer. I am the senior NBA reporter at Yahoo Sports, and I'm joined, as always, by my man, your man, everyone's man, senior NBA writer at Yahoo Sports, Dan Devine. What is up, sir?
Jake, I'm coming to you live from, I think, a bunker is what it kind of looks like. That's the vibe that I'm creating here. Hotel room in Denver, Colorado, where I just covered Game 1. And we might wind up getting a classic just yet, but we didn't have a classic in Game 1. Nikola Jokic saw fit to that.
With your suit and like your coiffed hair, you kind of look like Don Draper hiding away from his family in Los Angeles. That's kind of the vibes that I'm getting right now.
So thank you so much. Although I guess the hiding away from his family part is not so good. But this is one of those things where, so I got a haircut. I trimmed my beard. I put on a suit because it's the finals.
You look pretty. You look handsome.
Thank you so much. You got to try to look respectable in these sort of environments. The problem with that, though, is that when you start stacking up compliments from people about how you've cleaned up, it really makes you take stock of how you often look like garbage. Like you're sort of generally looking like a piece of trash with the pig pen kind of cloud of dust around you. So I might either have to step my level up more regularly or stop doing this. It's one or the other. There's no in-betweens.
When I was in college, I both gained a lot of weight and then lost a lot of weight. And when I lost a lot of weight, a lot of people were like, "Hey, you look really good." And I was like, man, what are you really trying to tell me here? You're trying to tell me I used to look really bad. So
yes, right. Every compliment is actually an insult if you see it the right way. That's the way I move through the world, Jake.
Exactly. Well, let's move through our agenda of this podcast. We will definitely get to Denver taking a 1-0 series lead over Miami thanks to a 104-93 victory. We will also touch on Adam Silver's non-announcement of sorts regarding Ja Morant during his media availability at the finals. And we'll discuss the new head coach of the Detroit Pistons, Monty Williams, getting the richest contract.
The bag.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to unpack there, which I don't think we'll be able to fully unpack in tonight's show, but just want to touch on it because it's, I mean, in my conversations with people the last couple of days, that's the number one talking point around the league for sure. But yeah, let's get to the game. I saw you tweet about this. It was something that I really noticed covering 5 and 6 against Phoenix in the second round, where Game 5 of that series, Jokic kind of like floated through the night. Floated is the word I'm going to use, where he just kind of was peppering passes and finding holes in the defense, and all of a sudden you looked up and he had a 30-point triple-double. And then Game 6 against Phoenix, the closeout game on the road, he was an absolute animal, gobbling up the paint, eating everything in sight, putting up, point after point from the get-go. There's kind of two sides, and then there's everything in between, but those are the two dominant versions of him. And I think it's so interesting that in all this talk about, the MVP stuff from the regular season to, comparing him to the all-time greats, and this is the final stage, and there's been so much industry chatter about, trying to build him into one of the faces of the league and yada, yada. He just comes out and he has 10 points and 10 assists on 3 shots in the first half, which I think is just so kind of special to his brand of brilliance. And clearly it took you as well. So I want to start there and kind of get your thoughts on the masterpiece that was kind of like a cakewalk for Nikola Jokic here.
Yeah, and it's something that we had seen in previous meetings with Jokic and the Heat. They're just, the fact that the Heat, Bam Adebayo is a phenomenal defender, one of the very best in the NBA, one of the most versatile in the NBA. He's 6'9" and 255 pounds. He can only do so much to bother Jokic. And when that's true, when you don't have anybody physically who can match up with him, not that anybody really has somebody physically that can match up with him, it forces you to have to make other choices with what your defensive scheme is going to be. The Heat love to play zone. You can't really play zone against Jokic because he'll find the seams, he'll find the passes, he'll set up open shooters for 3. You can't double team him in the post because as soon as you bring a second guy, he's firing the ball to the corner for Michael Porter Jr. 3 or spraying it out to Bruce Brown or whoever, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. If you don't double in the post, he's going to put somebody in the basket and either, loft in a soft little layup or get to the foul line, where I think he took 12 free throws tonight. So he only took 3 shots in that first half rather, but he absolutely controlled it, because the reason he only took 3 shots was because he was distributing the ball to everybody else. He was hitting Aaron Gordon on the high lows. He was getting backdoor cuts for Jamal Murray. Everybody else was eating because the Heat were so desperately trying to figure out what they could do with Jokic. And so he only took, I believe, like 5 shots through the third quarter. Then it looks like, all right, they got up, I believe, 21. And it's like they start the fourth quarter with Jokic and Murray on the floor. And it's like, this is them going for the knockout punch. The Heat don't go away, because they never do. Open up the fourth with an 11-0 run. And you're like, okay, well, is this going to kind of, are the Heat or the Nuggets going to let go of the rope a little bit? Are the Heat going to be able to scrounge their way back into this game, get there with the zone, etc.? Last 4 minutes, now it's Jokic's time. Now it's bucket, free throws, bucket, assist. Like he knows how to control the game from so many different avenues. And I think you see it in a game like this, where the stat line, it's wild that the stat line doesn't wind up making your eyes bulge out, because whatever it is, 27, 10, and 14, that should make your eyes bulge out. But he does it all the time. So to do it and have sort of exhibit that level of control, where I think Jamal Murray said after the game, he was dominating and it didn't even feel like it. Like he was absolutely on the switches and controls of every part of the game, even without looking for his own offense, because he knows he can get that whenever he wants. It presents just such an amazing amount of problems for any defense. And it's going to be, Miami's biggest challenge in this series is, how do we keep him from getting everybody else involved and getting himself to, 25, 30 points? Because it seems like he can kind of do that whenever he feels like it.
Yeah, I remember, the Nuggets were kind of one of the big talking points of the Combine week in Chicago, being that they were just kind of manhandling LA during the Western Conference Finals that week. It was all those games were pretty close largely, but like it just didn't feel like the Lakers had a chance. And it felt like and I remember a coach saying this to me, that Jokic brings it every single night on offense. In the Heat series, and tonight Jimmy Butler goes 6 of 14. All of their shooters, basically outside of Gabe Vincent, can't buy a bucket from outside. If the flip side, Boston, you have Tatum with his streaky play dating back to that Sixers series. Jaylen Brown, his inconsistencies. Joel Embiid, James Harden, Anthony Davis. Like, I feel like there are so few players in the NBA right now, even at the top tier, who are just, you are automatically penciling them in. Not penciling them in, you're writing it in Sharpie that this dude is getting you buckets, assists, whatever tonight. Like, he's just going to do something on offense that is going to absolutely raise your ceiling higher than the other teams. And that might be one thing that stands him apart from everyone else right now. Because the only other guys that are like there, Kawhi can't stay healthy. Steph and LeBron are, approaching 40. LeBron much closer than Steph, but that's just kind of the way it is. Apologies to anyone else you want to throw out there, but Giannis is going to be a force no matter what he does. But in terms of being an offense unto himself every single night, it just seems like Nikola Jokic has the most mixed bag to do it, and he's going to find something in there, whether it's he has to dig all the way at the bottom or just kind of reach for a couple tools at the top. He's going to beat you over the head with them. It's really this feels like an anointing type moment. Very early series, but I just think tonight, the fact that this was so stark in how he dominated while not doing anything is, to me, the biggest takeaway that I just wanted to ruminate on a little bit.
Yeah, and I think that it's not just that he has the tools in the bag to be able to beat you over the head with them. It's that the way he applies them elevates everybody else, right? He's able to, because he's the in the same way or a similar way as Duncan was or Curry is, or somewhere everybody takes their cue from the main guy. And when the main guy is about, I make things happen for other people, I create openings for you, I sacrifice myself to screen to get you open, that kind of stuff. And whenever you move, I will get you the ball. Always be ready. that filters through a team. And if you surround
That's like
him
me
with,
playing pickup on Tuesday night.
I'm sure.
I'm
sure it was exactly like that. I'm sure you are the kind of player that everybody revolves around. I understand that about you.
Yeah.
But like he's not in the same way that people talk. I'm referencing Steph a little bit, but where there's that question of like system superstar, or is he the system, right? And like I think that's long since been settled, but that was the discussion at the beginning. Jokic is the system. The system flows through him, flows from him, and so as after the game, the Nuggets, to a man, are talking about the brand of basketball they play. Jamal Murray called it like a fluid, beautiful brand of basketball, and the idea that it's all reads, it's all cuts, it's all flow, it's free flowing. We all have the freedom to kind of maneuver through it, and we know that if we make the right cut at the right time, we're going to get the ball. All of that comes from Jokic, and it has created an offense that was the best offense in this entire postseason coming into this game, that was overwhelming in the first half and staked the Nuggets to the kind of lead through the third quarter that even a little bit of a Heat run in the fourth couldn't really chip into too much. The offensive efficiency numbers by game's end are not great. I think there was around 111, 112 points per 100 possessions for Denver, which is well below the standard they've been at. But you combine that with how effectively they were able to defend Miami tonight. Miami missing a ton of open shots, and you still have a recipe for a double-digit win to go up 1-0 in the finals.
I was going to say shout out Max Strus, but what's the opposite of a shout out? Like
what? Anti-shout out, whisper in.
A hug.
He might need one.
Max Strus.
He might need one after this. Although, I mean, it was 0 for 7 at one point. 0 for 6 from 3.
Finished 0 for 10 overall from the
field. Finished 0 for 10. Yeah, and it felt like it because he was getting clean look after clean look, and they were just rimming out. Caleb Martin. Eric Spoelstra decides to stick with him in the starting lineup after the success that he had against the Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals, and just not saying he like turned back into a pumpkin, that it hit midnight and his days are over, but certainly was not the same level of impact. Could not get his shot to go. In the first half, I don't think he got a 3-pointer up. So like there was some issues about just getting to your shots, getting the offensive possessions on Miami's terms. They never were really able to do that, with the exception of Bam Adebayo, getting to shots that he can make, that he's comfortable with in that sort of floater range, free throw extended range. But if you're the Nuggets and you're saying Bam Adebayo is going to take 25 shots and score 26 points, and that's going to be the sort of the focal point of their offense, I think we'll take that. So I think, there's reason for Miami to feel okay coming out of this. Like, they didn't get their doors blown off. They were able to find something, stagnate the Nuggets offense with the zone in the fourth quarter. Their shooters it will be almost impossible for their shooters to shoot that badly again, but you're down to your last 3 outs here, and you're against a team that knows how to lean on an opponent to put them in a bad state of affairs.
Yeah, I mean, Duncan Robinson also found no spark from the outside either. Wow, a Dr. Pepper chug. Look at this.
It's late.
Look at this.
It's late.
I got a free package from Starry today, and it was the first time I've considered drinking a soda since 7th grade.
Wow, we have very different attitudes about soda.
I don't consume caffeine. It's not a thing. I'm not a caffeine person.
I don't care. I don't consume much else. I mean, there's a bottle of water over here, but I'm kind of looking at it askance. Like, all right, I guess I do have to stay hydrated. I am at altitude.
Dr. Pepper was one of my favorite sodas. That and the Dr. Brown's Diet Black Cherry was a teenage me. That was my dream. That was the drink when I went to the little. It wasn't a bodega. That's the only word coming to mind right now. The little bodega in the JCC where I played basketball.
It was Jake. If it was in the JCC, if it was in the JCC, it wasn't a bodega. You could maybe call it a store.
It was a store, whatever it was. Doc Brown's Diet Black Cherry.
They didn't have that at the free hospitality thing downstairs, so I just grabbed a couple of cans of something to keep me awake so that I can do this podcast and write a story before the end of the night.
There you go. Okay, let's bring it back to task, because you were starting to say something to the effect of there are things for Miami to be encouraged by. I'm guessing that it's not just Kevin Love is the answer in game 2 after a coach's DNP. What did you see that they can build on here? Obviously, Tyler Hero's injury status has been a very buzzy topic entering this series. Will he be back from a broken hand? It seems like he has recovered, and it's really just a matter of when or if he will ever be cleared to actually resume NBA gameplay. Potential for game 2 seems more likely to be later in the series, but outside of those, potential returns of guys that didn't play with this current, because this was the rotation that Eric Spoelstra and his staff brought into this game. So what tweaks do you see coming from them? The zone is such a patented staple of what this coaching staff does, and it really didn't have much success tonight, as you were alluding to earlier. So is it really just a matter of making more shots and trying to figure out different looks to throw and slow Jokic, or is there something else you're looking at here?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I think they were able to sort of stay connected through the first quarter and a half or so. Denver didn't get it up above like 8 or 9. They were still a few possessions away, and it kind of got away from them, midway through the second quarter and then into the third as it ballooned up to 21. And you're absolutely right. You note that when they went zone early in the first half, I think it was, and they did it when Jokic was off the floor, which I think was intentional. Like if you have the Jeff Green at center
and
lineup,
when Duncan Robinson was on, that was when they really brought it out too.
Yeah, you want to protect that defender, and you also don't want to show it to them when you have the best playmaker in the league on the floor. So it was Jeff Green at center, but Murray was out there too. And even in those non-Jokic minutes, I think John Schumann at NBA.com had the stat. I think it was in 6 possessions of zone, they scored 10 points in that first half. Like it was absolutely getting shredded because Denver was able to flash guys to the foul line. They were able to screen against the zone, create open shots. So some of it is, and Eric Spoelstra was talking after the game about the defensive disposition. Like it was better in the second half. They were more physical. They were better into the ball. They were more intentional with their rotations and, being able to sort of get into Denver's shooters and ball handlers a little bit more. That I would expect to continue to be a point of emphasis for them. Haywood Highsmith got into the game and had, he was able to provide a little bit on both ends of the floor. I think he finished with 18 points, saw some time on Jamal Murray, give them another sort of wing defender, another rangy guy, might be able to provide, not expecting him to suddenly step into that Caleb Martin role and start, putting up 25 and 15 or whatever, and more guys who can defend, because the size mismatches, and I believe our guy Ben Rohrbach is going to write about this for Yahoo Sports. You saw so often, especially in that first half, Aaron Gordon's just going to put somebody in the basket. Jokic can just put whatever switch he wants in the basket. Even Murray, if he's able to get in there on Gabe Vincent, shoot over the top of him. They're just Michael Porter Jr. Only finished like 2 for 11 tonight, which actually led to a funny moment in the post games where when Jokic went up to the podium, he looks at the stat sheet that's sitting there, and all of a sudden his eyes bug out. Like you see him like super wide-eyed. And Joe Casciaro from The Score, shouts out to him. He made a point of asking before Jokic's media availability ended, like, it looked like something surprised you when you got up there. And he was like, Mike went 2 for 11. I thought for sure he made like 7 threes tonight. It's crazy that he didn't make more, because those shots are going to be there because he can just shoot right over the top of whoever Miami puts out on him. So I think part of it is that, if you're able to bring some of that defensive comportment from the second half into the first half of game 2, you maybe put yourself in a better position, able to stay connected longer. The biggest thing though, and I know this is like dime store analysis, so forgive me, I'm wearing $1 million suit and I'm giving you dime store analysis, but Jimmy Butler can't be 6 for 14 from the floor. And Jimmy Butler can't settle for, 8 foot, 10 foot, 15 foot pull-ups instead of going all the way to the rim and forcing the referees to make a call, forcing Jokic to try to block him at the rim, maybe picking up fouls, putting him in foul trouble. And Jimmy after the game was very clear about that. Like said, when we were talking about the free throw discrepancy, that he'd only finished with 2 free throws. And Jimmy said at the end, like, maybe I have to be a little bit more aggressive. I've got to put pressure on the rim. Me with no free throws, that's all on myself, nobody else. So you can look at, I'm sure there will be conspiracy theorists that say, they didn't blow the whistle for Miami because they wanted to have Denver or whatever, whatever thought process goes through people's minds to say the refs are in the tent for the Denver Nuggets.
So hold on. So the narrative that no one cares about Denver, the ratings are going to be bad, and now, the whole thing that was starting to build, the Nuggets had like the easiest walk to the title ever. Now the refs are in the tank for this small market team that the league doesn't want to be in the finals. Is that what you're saying to me?
My understanding, Jake, is that everybody is against everybody all the time, and they're only in favor of your sworn enemies. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, I hate your team too. Dan
Yes.
hates her team. I make up a lot of rumors just because I know it's going to make your front office's lives more challenging. That's my goal every single day.
I think these after dark shows maybe should be truth-telling opportunities for us to be able to unburden ourselves with the truths like that. So I hope that feels good to get that off your chest, Jake. But so for the Heat, I mean, the biggest thing is if Jimmy Butler is not the best player in the series, the Heat got no shot, right? And or if he's not able to at least make a claim to that, he knows that. He's very clear about that. Like, I can't take 14 shots. I can't take the kinds of shots that I took. So they got a couple days. They're going to get in the lab. They're going to take a look at what they did well, what they did not do well. I think, but I think it starts with better aggressiveness on the defensive end from the front, and then also Jimmy Butler has to lead from the opening tip by getting head down to the basket, and then forcing the Nuggets to stop him as opposed to stopping himself before he gets there.
As we discussed in the past, we are both vibesmen, you and I. So. I just want one final dispatch from Ball Arena. What was the scene like? Any little anecdotes you saw? Anything you want to tell our listeners? Any review of the potential music scene in the arena? Give us some thoughts here.
So you talked about when you were in Denver to write us a couple stories about the Nuggets. You said that there was sort of a ravey vibe.
Oh I felt it.
You felt so, and then you had asked, how is the rave? And I don't know if it's that I had worked it up so much in my head to where I'm thinking like it's going to be basically a foam party on the bench and people have like glow sticks and pacifiers in their mouths or whatever. But
maybe I brought the glow sticks last time and it kind of got a little excited.
Yeah, I had to pack the suit. I couldn't pack the glow sticks in the carry-on, but so it wasn't quite that. Although there was a point, and I made a note of it because I'm a sicko as I'm making notes during the game. You've sat next to me and seen me making the notes during the game. 7:16 mark, fourth quarter. It's during a timeout. And all of a sudden I feel the little, like the table in front of me start to shake because the bass is getting so cranked up on the song that they're playing in the timeout. However, I don't think they actually dropped. I don't think the drop actually happened. I was waiting for the drop. We've talked about waiting for the drop.
We've talked about it.
And I don't think they might have just come out of the timeout a little quicker because, I mean, maybe I don't know. Maybe I just was so locked in on the game and I missed it. But you'd imagine if they actually didn't drop make the drop, an arena full of people would have just like lost their minds and demanded that the drop happen.
I think all life in the arena would have ceased to exist. I think everyone would have just dropped and that would have been done.
So maybe what happened is the drop did happen, but I was feeling the shaking from the bass that it didn't register with me. But the vibe in the arena broadly was confidence. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, they're kind of like a bloodthirsty crowd. Like they are very much embodied of the mind and spirit of this team. That like we're here. We don't really care that you're there because we're here. That's kind of what I've picked up on.
Yeah, their sense is the Nuggets as a team. Their sense appears to be if we do what we do, you don't matter. Like we'll respect our opponent. Make sure we're studying up on the tendencies, locking in. Michael Malone is going to make sure if he sees a little bit of slippage, he's going to call a timeout. He's going to make sure that everybody's really locked in. But they are so confident in what they're doing offensively, and in the personnel they now have on the defensive end, as you wrote in your story about, them bringing in KCP, bringing in Aaron Gordon, bringing in Bruce Brown to fortify and sort of surround Jokic and Murray. They're so confident in what that core can be and what they're getting up and down the rotation. They kind of feel like as long as they execute, they're going to win. They've yet to lose at home in the postseason. They're 13-3. They have dominated on the offensive end. They showed tonight that they can win with defense a little bit too. It's the vibe in the arena was, if this is going to go, like, this won't last long. And the further the game went on, the shorter it felt like this series was going to go. Now, only one game, overreactions aplenty in that situation. I'm sure Miami's going to look at it and say, we changed 3 or 4 things around. We're right back in that thing. We hit a couple of threes. We're right back in it. But the vibe in the arena tonight was like, this is preparing for a coronation, as you put it earlier.
There you go. Okay, that's it for finals reaction. We are going to take a quick break and come back with some reactions to a couple of news nuggets from the week that was. Welcome back to No Cap Room, here late on Thursday night, early Friday morning on the East Coast. Got Dan Devine live from Denver, wearing a suit, looking pretty. The biggest news of the NBA week came down, I believe it was Wednesday. All the days are, I told someone today, my life now is, it's not Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. It's what day is there a game at night and everything else in between.
But you're right. It was Wednesday because we went through the whole media day rigmarole, and everyone gets home and they filed their stories and they're all done, and then bam, new big news break happening.
So Monty Williams, the new head coach of the Detroit Pistons, to the tune of 6 years, $78.5 million, which is the richest deal for an NBA coach in league history. We can get into the process of it a little bit. I'm just gonna say this to start. I had 3 reactions seeing the final number, which I had heard that Detroit was willing to go north of upwards of $13 million in average annual value. That was the word I had heard after the Athletic report came out that afternoon, which is a lot of money. And it turns out that's what the money is. So my first thought was, holy hell, Monty Williams might be the most highest paid person in the entire Detroit Pistons organization, which I had to double check. And Marvin Bagley out earns him by a touch. Bojan Bogdanovic does as well. But man, oh man, second reaction, what a savings for the Phoenix Suns to not have to pay him $21 million anymore. Third reaction, from Ty Lue on down, huge win for anyone looking for a payday. But to the Ime Udokas and the Nick Nurses and the Adrian Griffins, who definitely did not make north of $12 million in average annual salary here. I mean, Nick Nurse's contract with Philly, the ink probably hasn't even dried yet. I've been told his is a 5-year deal. I'm sure he's very thrilled for his situation in Philadelphia to coach with Daryl Morey again, and to try to oversee Joel Embiid's resurgence from postseason shortcomings. But number one name I'm thinking this benefits is Ty Lue and his quest for a new contract with the Clippers. And I just do wonder what this generally will change about the coaching marketplace, where it does seem like we're going to continue to see more firings more frequently. And also the cap is rising so exponentially. Why wouldn't coaching salaries also rise in proportion at a certain point in time? But last thing, it's a lot of money to pay someone who you're expecting to get you to the play-in tournament next year. So I do wonder, does that mean that someone who's expected to compete for championships and has a championship like Ty Lue, does that put his number at 15 million? What's I don't know where the new ceiling is going to end up being. Is this going to be one of the new cheat codes in a second apron world in the new CBA? I don't know. But this is not going to be a contract that just happens in a vacuum.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, if I'm, Ty Lue, it's the price of the brick is going up type situation, right? Whatever you think Monty Williams is worth, chances are I can make an argument that I'm worth even more. And Steve Ballmer, I know you're not going to be hunting for money in the couch cushions to pay it. So, and yeah, I mean, it's you see quarterbacks in the NFL, right? A deal sets the market, and then everybody, every new deal is based off of that. Jalen Hurts gets X, Lamar Jackson wants to get X plus 5, right? And that's kind of the way these things are iterative.
That's what happened when I found out how much Yahoo paid you. I wanted plus 5 after that.
I can't blame you. One of us it looks resplendent in a suit, but the other one doesn't have to wear a suit to confer value and gravitas. So I think it's clear that what the value that you bring to the table. It was something actually that Adam Silver got asked tonight in his annual finals press session. The idea, there's that sort of general saying, there's no salary cap for coaches, that's an area where you can get excess value by paying up. That's what you should do. But the question was sort of posed to him, like, should there be, given this recent headline and the new deal for Monty Williams, which Michael Malone before the game congratulated Monty Williams and said, "I got to hit him up for a loan." That's my man. Like, I thought that was pretty good. Michael Malone, I'm sure not hurting under the Cronkies in Denver, but a congratulations due for his friend. And Adam Silver kind of worked his way through the answer to that, and there's no salary cap, and all of a salary cap is a mechanism for distributing the players' share of the revenue. I'm sure that if we said, the coaches could have that, they'd sign up for it. But also the coaches are not a collectively bargained. They're not a union, so they're not collectively bargained, and yada, yada, yada. Like an answer that goes into BRI and stuff like that, which is a legitimate answer.
Spoken
but also,
like a Duke lawyer.
Yes. Who sort of like didn't, and I don't blame him if he didn't really have any interest in the league taking interest in trying to artificially tamp down on coaching salary or what. I don't know. I guess I'm not exactly sure what the point of a coaching salary cap would be. I think if we got to maybe several years down the line, if it becomes evident that paying Monty Williams like he's 2004 Emeka Okafor or something like that makes a dramatic enough difference in Detroit to where they are like leading the pack all of a sudden, then yeah, maybe you look at it and say, well, that's a competitive advantage that would need to be leveled in some way. But I see no evidence of that just yet. And I think let's wait and see what happens here in Detroit. But the thing that stood out most to me about the deal is the 6 years. You keep much closer tabs on this than I do, but the last 6-year commitment I remember was Brad Stevens, which he got because the Celtics were about to start. They were going through this big rebuild. He was starting from scratch, coming out of Butler, and there was the sense that we need a long runway for this.
And it was for $36 million, not 78.5.
Yeah, less than half of this. So the idea that, and then that Monty Williams coming off of like having just been shown the door in Phoenix, justly, unjustly, new owner wanting to put his stamp on things, whatever, that you run right away to give him a 6-year deal, kind of stood out to me and bulged my eyes out because it indicates an understanding in Detroit that like this is going to be a longer process, but also an investment of that caliber suggests like we expect some results pretty quick here, and maybe they have what it takes on hand to do that. A healthy Cade Cunningham back to pair with Jaden Ivey in the backcourt. Jalen Duren, I thought, showed an awful lot. He was the youngest player in the NBA last year, and he looked like he belonged. I don't know what you should expect to get from Marvin Bagley III at this point, but he's there. They have James Wiseman, again, copy and paste what I just said for Marvin Bagley for James Wiseman. Coterie of bigs there, a whole, passel of them. Maybe among them they turn into something, but that plus the number 5 pick, you're able to get a wing with that maybe, whether that's a Thompson twin, whether that's Cam Whitmore, whoever, or parlay that into something else. You've got the makings of something, kind of interesting there. And maybe we sort of crank back the clock a little bit to what Monty did with that first Suns team where he, the one that sort of caught fire in the bubble and built itself into something serious. Maybe that's kind of what Detroit is looking to be able to first implement and then build on the way the next few years of the Suns basketball was able to be built from there.
That's what they're hoping for. The last thing I'll say is just that there's far more to one day write and report and learn more about this situation. Every NBA team has their share of palace intrigue, but there's always, not always, there are often moments where your iceberg raises up and pokes its tip out and kind of reveals itself. And this it has a nice coda, big splash. We got arguably the best coach on the market. And it's this richest contract ever. And, we're investing, and Tom Gores had to have his guy. But it was a 2-month-long interview process where, by all accounts, I've written this, Mark Stein's written this, others have written this, like Troy Weaver, the general manager, wanted Kevin Ollie. And Charles Lee was a strong supported candidate. We talked about something on one of our recent recordings. Charles Lee was like by all accounts, the leading candidate if it wasn't going to be Monty Williams. They brought those guys back for second interviews in LA. And all the while, they keep reaching back out to Monty Williams and reaching back out to Monty Williams. And you have Dwayne Casey's in the front office in some capacity now. It's Stefanski's there. Arn Tellem is an extension of ownership. There's so many cooks in that kitchen that led to, from my understanding, I mean, that kind of lack of synergy amongst all those decision makers led to the drawing out of this process. And it sounds like a great conclusion, but you're now adding in someone who, from my understanding in Phoenix, had specific, wants and needs from the front office and his partnership with management. And I don't know Troy Weaver's salary, but I can guarantee you he ain't making anywhere close to what Monty Williams makes.
Right.
So you're adding now someone into this organizational chart who has the paycheck to be able to kind of swing a big bat around if he wants to. Which those types of things are just things I want to say and kind of throw on the bulletin board if we're Carrie and Homeland and trying to draw strings of things to see, if this thing, if changes were to ever come, if this were to fall short, that type of stuff. These are the kind of things that just, from my vantage point, I try to start to file away and take notes on and ask some more questions about. So just felt like that was something to kind of, leave our listeners with here, because not a conventional way to run a coaching search by any stretch. Not that there really seems to be one this coaching cycle at all. The Toronto's still, interviewing. I mean, they might interview you tomorrow, and they might call you back for a second interview a couple weeks later. Yeah.
Well, why do you think I got the suit and the haircut? Yeah, I got to be ready to be able to walk in and start yelling about triangle and two and box and ones, and maybe that might not be the vibe they're looking for. They just got done with that. They maybe don't need a whole lot of that strumming guitar as I do it.
So yeah, I mean, Toronto and Phoenix are the last two coaching spots open. Phoenix, Kevin Young has gotten a ton of support from the players there. I do believe he's got a real strong shot. But I've also heard a lot today that Matt Ishbia and the new ownership group there, they would maybe feel a little bit more comfortable with a veteran coach. Maybe also the fact that the guy they fired just signed the richest contract in NBA history might play a new factor in their outcome there. I think the thought of letting him walk to that and then elevating his assistant might not necessarily kind of be congruent with a guy's mentality where he sold the entire farm for Kevin Durant the day that he bought the franchise officially. And then, the Raptors, I mean, we keep hearing Jordy Fernandez, Darko Rajakovic, Sergio Scariolo, Kenny Atkinson, a bunch of names that keep popping up. Seems like they're narrowing it down, but, the coaching world right now will be reacting mostly to the ripple effects, the vibrations of the frequencies of Monty Williams in Detroit. Okay, the last item, and then we'll get out of here, and I will go to bed, and you will write because you're 2 hours behind me on Mountain Time. I was not at Adam Silver's press conference that you mentioned that you were at when he spoke about the coaching salary cap idea, which I agree with Adam Silver. I don't think that's ever something that's really going to get over the finish line or even be a real talking point. I think it's just kind of, it's in the news. Why not ask the commissioner about it type thing? But he was asked about the ongoing developments with Ja Morant and his looming disciplinary action, which the entire league since the Combine, and I think it was that Sunday night, it was right before the Combine when Ja posted another Instagram story showing what definitely appeared to be another handgun. So I'm just going to leave it at that. I was not there. I'm going to ask you, Dan, about what Silver had to say and what your immediate thoughts and maybe the sense around that press conference was and what he could be alluding to is still to come for the Memphis Grizzlies star point guard.
Yeah, it was Jeff Zilgett from USA Today asked about the investigation involving Morant, an update on the timeline, when you expect it to end, et cetera. And, given that this is not a situation where there's a whole lot of precedent for the kind of infraction or the kind of, behavior that Ja has been, that has gotten him suspended. Exhibited, yeah. That has gotten him suspended first by the team twice, or first by the league and then by the team. There's the sense of in assessing what discipline's appropriate, we'll look at the history of prior acts, but individual history, et cetera, et cetera. It's not an exact science, but the timing. This is the part that was kind of opened your eyes a little bit. Here's Adam Silver quote: "In terms of the timing, we've uncovered a fair amount of additional information, I think, since I was first asked about the situation. I will say we probably could have brought it to a head now, but we made the decision, and I believe the Players Association agrees with us, that it would be unfair to these players and these teams in the middle of the series, the finals, to announce the results of that investigation. It seemed better to park that at the moment, at least any public announcement, and my sense now is that shortly after the conclusion of the finals, we will announce the outcome of that investigation." So it's one of those things where, I understand the thought process of, we don't want this off-court disciplinary matter to overshadow the great product on the court, the great stories of the Denver Nuggets, the great stories of the Miami Heat, this sort of global celebration that the finals becomes. I think it was something like 214 countries are going to be broadcasting the game, all that kind of stuff. Media from all over the world coming in for it. But when you say, we thought it would be best not to, make it a focal point. So just heads up, look out for detox. It's coming right after the finals. Like delivering a teaser for a disciplinary action to come from there.
The NBA is a soap opera. You got to keep leaving dangling plot lines for your audience to latch onto.
Yeah, leave them wanting more, I guess. But yeah, so I mean, I think the immediate takeaway from that was the additional information component. Adam Silver saying we probably could have brought it to a head right now. We feel like there's enough for us to conclude the investigation. I think the initial, at least in that room, the initial thought was, okay, then a suspension is coming and probably a significant one. So people starting to wonder over under on when you would see Ja Morant on the floor next. And, is that going to be 25 games, 35 games, half the season, who knows? But depending on what that additional information that's come to light is, could be quite a while before Morant suits up again. Although, again, that's pure speculation. But based on the way that Silver communicated that tonight, that was the sort of the feeling in the room. And I also wanted to just shout out Vinny Goodwill, our colleague, host of Good Word with Goodwill on Mondays on the BDL feed. He has to follow up on it. And just, when you look at the totality of everything that's transpired, do you feel like that first suspension, the 8-game suspension, was maybe too light? Do you feel like you maybe could have sent a stronger message there? And Silver said, he thought about that. He thought back about the meeting that they had initially. And, he said, I guess in hindsight, I don't know if it had been a 12-game suspension instead of an 8-game suspension, would that have mattered? It seemed based on precedent, and he's represented. We want to be fair in terms of the league. It seemed appropriate at the time. That's all I can say. Maybe by definition, to the extent that we've all seen the video, it appears he's done it again. I guess you can say maybe not, but I don't think we know yet what it will take to change his behavior. And that's, again, he followed it up by saying he seems like a fine young man, which people around Memphis, there are plenty of people who will, attest to that as well. And just, you don't want to judge somebody by their worst moments. The doing it again so quickly after the first time, I think, left a lot of people's noses at a joint, feeling like that's, being sort of flagrant in the face of what the league had been asking of him. But this is that question of what will it take to make a meaningful impact on his behavior. And I guess what's the NBA's job there? What's their role in that disciplinary process? What responsibility do the Grizzlies have for that? At what point does it just fall at the feet of Ja and his own personal responsibility? Those are all pretty big questions to try to answer in this process. And I don't know that Adam Silver is going to be able to definitively answer them one way or another, but I would anticipate, based on the way you discussed it tonight, that when we get past the finals, maybe after the draft, I don't know, when this all gets brought up and resolved, it'll be a pretty significant punishment for Morant coming, and the Grizzlies are going to have to deal with, and he's going to have to deal with. And the next chapter in his career is going to have to start with a manifest change of that behavior.
Yeah. Look, before Adam Silver does these media availabilities, you can bet that he sits around a table with plenty of public relations staffers and they prepare themselves for what possible questions could be coming and what the answers could be.
Right.
So for him to reveal this, it's not just a guy saying something in front of a microphone. And it's definitely something along the lines of, when I say elephants, what are you thinking about now? Elephants. Like, I think this was clear. Like, I mean, obviously he said it straight up. We don't want this to distract from things. The fact that he said that definitely makes me think that, to your point, there will be some type of heft to the punishment. Because if it's something that could potentially distract us from the finals,
right?
Then
yeah,
like, I don't think it's 10 games. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's kind of, I mean, maybe that's a reductive, like, obvious thing to say, but that was kind of my thought on the matter there.
No, yeah, it's a great point. Like, if whatever he was going to say would be something that would take away attention from who wins the freaking championship, it's probably a pretty big thing to have to say.
There you go. We'll find out more as the finals continue. We will be bringing you instant reactions all series long on the Ball Don't Lie podcast feed. We'll have continued editions of On the Clock with Kristen Peak. I believe at this point in time, I'm scheduled to be a guest on Good Word with Goodwill with our friend Vinny Goodwill. I was going to say Vince and our friend, and it turned into our friends, Rafe LaFrance.
Don't promise a guest we can't deliver. All right, don't promise Rafe LaFrance to the people.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to talk to Rafe LaFrance about the NBA Finals in 2023.
Get at us, Rafe. You know where we're at. I'm in Denver. I'm in a hotel.
Dan, thanks for Zooming me tonight. Thanks to John Gennaro for doing all the things he does to make the show look and sound great from the behind the proverbial glass. Follow us on Twitter. I am at Jake L. Fischer. That is at your man Devine. And please subscribe to the Ball Don't Lie feed on YouTube or wherever podcast platform you are currently listening to us, and give us a 5-star review. That would be so lovely. We thank you for listening. We appreciate you. We'd appreciate it if you came back again next week for another episode of No Cap Room.